Hello, Habersham County students. I am Cheryl Kowalsky, the Habersham County Farm Bureau Women's Committee Chair. First, let me say, the Farm Bureau volunteers have missed visiting the schools to share activities and projects about agriculture with you in the classrooms this year. However, today, we are excited to offer this virtual video with our community to showcase the American Farm Bureau Foundation for Agriculture 2020 Book of the Year, Full of Beans, Henry Ford Grows a Car by Peggy Thomas. We are proud to have two special guests to read this historical story about Henry Ford to you. Joining us is Mike Jones, the principal owner of the Ford Lincoln dealership in Eastanollee. Mike is a graduate of Habersham Central. He is an FFA alumni member from Habersham Central and serves on the Habersham Central Career Technical Agricultural Education FFA Advisory Board. Also with us today is Grace McClain. She is a senior FFA member from Habersham Central. Grace has earned many awards on the district, state, and national levels. Most recently in Perry, Georgia, Grace won the 2021 Senior Showman and the Master FFA Showmanship title at the Georgia National Livestock Show. Before we get started with the story, I would like to thank Jonathan and Michelle McClain for letting Farm Bureau video our reading from their beautiful farm. Mike and Grace.
Thank you, Cheryl. Henry Ford made cars, millions of cars, but this story isn't about cars. Well, maybe just one. It's about one car and a lot of beans. Henry had a mind for machines and was driven to improve the world around him. When he was young, his mother said, "Do something useful," and encouraged him to make life for others a little smoother, a little easier, a little happier. Sometimes he was successful. He built smoother ride in his affordable Model T, sort of. He sped up factories with the moving assembly line and made the workers happier with $5 an hour wage. Sometimes he was not. When he experimented with shrink-proof wool, he got a drawer full of tiny socks. But one concern needled him his whole life: farming. Farming was hard work. No one knew that better than Henry. Growing up on a Michigan farm, he dreaded the long hours behind a horse and plow. From the time I left the front gate as a boy, my only interest in a farm has been to lighten its labor, said Henry. If I can do that, I shall have rendered a real service to humanity. A teenager, he hammered together a crude tractor, but it couldn't haul a hayseed. As a successful car manufacturer, Henry still experimented with building tractors from leftover car parts. One of these tractors, the Fordson, sold for more than 50 years. But heavy hauling and long hours of plowing was only part of the problem farmers faced in 1929. The entire country suffered. The Great Depression. The stock market crashed, businesses failed, people couldn't find jobs. Some farmers lost their land. Others left their crops rotting in the field that they couldn't afford to harvest. Henry remembered his mother's words: do something useful. What if farmers had a new market for their produce? They could earn more money and their crops wouldn't go to waste. Henry absolutely hated waste. Industry owes it to society to conserve materials in every possible way, said Henry. Henry recycled everything. The Ford factory in Dearborn, Michigan reused rags, boxes, and even sawdust. Every day, garbage trucks dumped several tons of trash at the factory, where it was processed and turned into useful products: fuel for cars, material to pave roads, fertilizer for plants, charcoal briskets for grilling hot dogs. What if he used farmers' crops the same way? Anything that can be grown from industry's raw materials will bring new revenue to the agriculture. But first, Henry had to figure out which vegetables were suitable. On a patch of land that he called Greenfield Village, Henry built a laboratory. He hired a team of young men to study the chemicals in every grain, fruit, and vegetable. One of these men was Robert Boyer. While ratchets and widgets cranked and spun in Henry's brain, Robert thought about chemicals and atoms that could be pulled apart and mixed together. Soon truckloads of vegetables tumbled into a heap outside the lab. Carrots one week, corn stalks the next, turnips, tomatoes, and wheat. Robert ground, whirled, boiled, and stirred. Henry rocked or did chin-ups on a beam. That's the way he's thinking. After 2 years, they discovered the perfect crop for the factory. The soybean. People in China had grown and eaten soybeans for centuries, but in the United States, the soybean was cow feed. To Henry, it was a wonder crop. Soybeans were easy to grow, enriched in soil, and were bursting with oil and protein. Henry imagines farmers all across the country growing soybeans for food and for industry. But exactly what could they make from oil and protein of this little lung? To work that out, Henry needed lots and lots of soybeans. Grace?
In the spring of 1932, a fleet of Ford tractors planted 300 different kinds of soybeans across 8,000 acres. Soon, the city of Dearborn sat in a sea of soybeans. In the fall, Robert ground, whirled, boiled, and stirred. Henry continued to think. Mixing soybean oil with coloring and other ingredients created a paint that was glossier, less expensive, and dried to a harder finish than other coatings did. From a hospital bed where he was recovering from surgery, Henry announced that every Ford car would wear soybean paint. That came as a surprise to Robert, who had to hurry to perfect the paint for production. Next, Henry's team mixed soy protein with a chemical resin to make a hard plastic. Soon, cars rolled off the assembly line gleaming with the soybean plastic horn buttons, gear shift knobs, light switches, and distributor caps. The more cars Henry built, the more soybeans he needed. Henry kept a network of 700 Michigan farms busy, growing more than 22,000 acres of soybeans. Some people thought Henry was full of beans, and he was. He ate beans. One of his favorite snacks was called the Model T, a soybean cracker cut from the dough using a real Model T hubcap. Henry sold soy flour to factory workers and served soy ice cream in the lunchroom. Robert spun soy protein into thread, woven into a fabric. It was nearly as strong as wool. Henry's tailor stitched him in soybean suit, and the men from the lab gave him a soybean silk tie. And Henry wanted to drive beans. Every Ford car already contained a bushel of soybeans, from the gear shift knob to the paint. But Henry wanted the cars to even beanier. He imagined an automobile as revolutionary as his Model T. A whole car made out of soybean plastic, so lightweight it would use less gas than any other car on the road. Making small plastic parts was easy. Molding giant plastic panels was not. When the first panel popped out of the mold, Henry grabbed his axe, aiming the blunt end, and he swung. He punched a hole clear through. To test the strength of the next panel, Henry jumped up and down on it. If that was steel, he said, it would have caved in. Henry attached a plastic trunk lid to his own car. With a crowd of people watching, Henry opened the trunk and pulled out his axe. He swung as hard as his wiry frame would allow. This time, the axe bounced off the plastic and over his shoulder. It was time to assemble the car. Henry's team affixed the plastic panels onto a tubular steel frame, 2 fenders in the front, 2 in the rear, a front grille, the engine hood, the doors, and a roof. 14 plastic panels in all. No one had seen anything like it. The men in the Ford plant called it monstrosity, just an old man's hobby. Henry knew it was much more. It wasn't just a car. It was the perfect symbol for how farms could fuel factories. On August 13th of 1941, everyone gathered for the Dearborn Day festivities. Dressed in his soybean suit, Henry rode to the fairgrounds in his sleek new automobile, the color of a wax bean. Some folks joked that the car ran on salad dressing rather than gas. Others saw Henry's revolutionary vision, "Please hurry it." One reporter wrote, "Mr. Ford, hurry, hurry." But 4 months later, no one was talking about Henry's amazing soybean plastic car. On December the 7th, the Japanese Navy attacked Pearl Harbor, and America was at war. The Ford Motor Company stopped making cars and began building bomber planes. The soybean plastic car rolled into storage. Nobody knows for sure, but its steel frame may have been recycled for the war effort. The plastic panels disappeared. It would be one of Henry's last innovations. He died on April 7th of 1947. Henry will always be remembered for making cars, millions of cars, but only one proved that Henry was not full of beans. Today, soybean farmers continue to fuel factories, growing furniture and flooring, dog biscuits and bread, candy, crayons, and cars.
Thank you, Mike and Grace, for sharing Henry Ford's story with us today. Students, if you want to learn more about Henry Ford, this book is available for you in your school's library. Also, please feel free to follow us on Facebook. We're always sharing information about agriculture so that you can learn more. And again, we look forward to coming back to your school soon so that we can share special projects and activities with you so that you can learn more about agriculture in the classroom. Thank you.